We are back with Joe Duffy from OffshoreInsiders.com. I'm Peter Loshak, and we are previewing a handful of games from the round of 64 in the NCAA Tournament. And right now we're going to take a look at Kentucky Hampton. This is going to be a total pass for me, but we'll see what you have to say about it. Joe Duffy, thanks for being back with us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Joe, Kentucky, a hugely dominant team, obviously. Would you say that you are the Kentucky of this year in the handicapping world?
I would say, look, I like to measure success by the decade. Is it one of my absolute top 4 or 5 years so far? Not necessarily, but I think I'm more like the UCLA of handicapping.
Okay, that sounds great, Joe. Well, Kentucky, a 34-point favorite. Total is 134.5. And, if we knew for a fact, if Kentucky wanted to cover this spread, obviously they could cover with ease, right? If you told each player on Kentucky you get, $1 million, if you guys can cover against Hampton, Kentucky probably wins by 60, right? But are they really going to be motivated to cover a huge number like this if they're up by 40, if they're up by 25, whatever they're up by? And Hampton, 8-0 against the spread in their 8-line games so far this year. They lost by 34 at Iowa, but they lost by 18 at Syracuse, 18 at Illinois. Obviously, the main and maybe the only handicapping factor here is the motivation of Kentucky to get a cover. This is going to be a complete pass for me, but what do you have to say about this game, Joe?
You perked my ears, Peter. I thought you were going to tell me that you knew that somebody was paying Kentucky to cover the spread here. But now what you said is true. Hampton, look, I was tipped off by one of my better sources. We actually rode Hampton in those line games because Hampton had a couple players who were eligible in the second semester that were not eligible in the first, so it makes sense that they played their best at the end of the year. And there are a lot of cliches that are false, but one is true, that when you have an underdog that is streaking at the right time, they're generally a good bet. Not only is Hampton 8-0, but they're averaging cover by 15 points per game. That's a pretty lot. 15 points per game is their average cover. They're realistic. They know that they've got no chance to win this game outright, but this is one of those things where if they can even hold it remotely close, it is truly going to be a moral victory. You're right, Kentucky's in a position where they could name their score, and it's not necessarily a case where they're going to let up per se. They do have a lot of talent. They go very deep, but still, this is one of the bigger point spreads in a long time. And sometimes, you gotta no guts, no glory, as they say. It's going to be one of those cases where we're sweating it out, where we're only down by 20 with 5 minutes remaining, and then maybe Kentucky goes on a mini run, but the line is just a little bit too high, and we will sweat out a victory going with the humongous underdog Hampton.
Really? Hampton plus 34. See, my sense is that if Hampton does get a cover, then almost certainly the game goes under, right? I mean, if the game goes over, is there any way that Hampton stays within 34? I don't think so. So I'm thinking that maybe based on all the handicapping factors that you just cited, a better play would be the under 134.5 than just taking Hampton to cover, because you might also get like a 50-point win by Kentucky that still goes way under, right?
We've tested that theory. I know I've heard that so many times where people say, well, if you like the big underdog, you like the under. If you like the big favorite, you've got to like the over. And we've been able to run that. That's not necessarily totally true. Hampton, maybe they'll try to slow it down, but that, a lot of people overstate that. I think at the end of the day, Hampton's got to just play their game, and they have been playing pretty well. And they do have some pretty decent athletes. And most importantly, they're just a teeny bit undervalued because of the players that they added for the second semester. So I've never been big in the handicapping the side and totals together, this kind of if-then type proposition. But Kentucky, there's tremendous defensively, and if they do want to make a statement, they can really make a statement on the defensive end here. So, yeah, maybe points would be tough to come by, and I would say, if anything, the under probably is a pretty decent play.
Interesting thoughts. Joe Duffy, liking Hampton plus 34. If I had to bet this game, I would take the under 134.5, but I'm not sure if I'm actually going to bet that. Thanks so much, Joe Duffy. Again, Joe Duffy's website, OffshoreInsiders.com.